Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second of today's live streams where we get the chance to look into all the new features of Capture One 16.6, to use the official term, or the new version of Capture One. So for clarity, I'm using 16.6, which came out just this week on Tuesday. So it's available now. You can also grab a trial. So everything you see today is available if you want to try it out yourself. So welcome to those of you who are watching on our YouTube channel. I'll keep an eye on your comments and questions that come through. And hello to those of you who are hanging out in our live streaming room as well. We're also joined by Helen and Victor. So they'll be helping me out answering some questions as well. If you're in the live streaming room, just remember that on the Q&A tab, then if you pop your question in there, that just keeps it separate from the chat, and then it's easier for us to be able to answer those questions as they come. If you want a bit more space, you can click the down arrow and that will give you more space to see and watch Capture One. Fantastic. All right, let's go straight into it and move over to Capture One and talk about what we're going to look at today. So the obvious one, of course, is this one here, Retouch Faces. Whoops, didn't turn on the mouse locator as usual. So the obvious one here is, what's going on with my tablet? Need to move that over. Is Retouch Faces over here. We're also going to look at the Session Builder. We've also got some changes to the way we're working with lens corrections and Canon, or some Canon models, I should say. A little bit of news about performance increase, which is actually pretty important. And then also Capture One Live and Live for Studio, how they're handling the changes that we've got to the Session Builder as well. So we're going to start with the Session Builder, move on to Retouch Faces, and then wrap up with the other bits and pieces as well. This is being recorded. Of course, it's going straight to YouTube, so you'll be able to rewatch again at your leisure. Okay, so first of all, let's go ahead and let's look at a session. So for those of you who are not completely sure what a session is, I'll give you the quick 30-second rundown. So in Capture One, you've got two options for file management. You've got catalogs and sessions. Catalogs, designed for a broad overview of your work, holds many pictures, plenty of different ways to search, organize, filter, and so forth. Sessions, on the other hand, are mostly used for something like a single project. So that could be a shoot in a studio, it could be a location project, it could be a project that's spanning an amount of time, a few weeks, a few months, or whatever, but not designed for millions of images, designed for a single project or shoot in a studio. Now, typically when you make a session, it comes with these four folders: capture, output, selects, and trash. The capture folder being where the captures go, the output folder where your final formats like TIFF and JPEG go, the trash folder for the deletes, and a selects folder for dragging selected images if you want to use it. Now, typically this capture folder, if we go into here, this one is a large session and it's divided up into further capture folders. So let's imagine if you were doing a shoot in a studio, you might want to separate out your looks. Let's imagine you are doing a project on location, and again, you might want to divide up the images into different days, different parts of the project, and so on. Typically, you would make a bunch of folders inside the capture folder. Now, that was a very manual, slightly time-consuming process, so you'd have to make the folders first, and then what you would have to do, if I just make myself a new session first of all, and call this, actually we'll come back to that. So what you would have to do, let's just open up a small session so it's easier for you to see what I'm talking about. And then what you would have to do, if we look at this session, sorry, tying myself in knots. What you would have to do if you had a bunch of additional folders inside the capture folder, you would have to pick these up and drop them over here into session favorites. Now, if you didn't do that, Capture One would not know that they exist. And then things like smart albums wouldn't work, searching and filtering would break, and so on. So the creation of those sub capture folders was manual, and you also had to add them to session favorites. And to be honest, a lot of people weren't even aware that this functionality was possible. So what we've done is to, first of all, make creating these sub-capture folders much easier, and also do away with having to add stuff to session favorites if you don't want to. So let's just close this session down. We're going to come back to this later, and we are going to make a new session. And first of all, we're going to look at this manual process here. So when you make a new session, you're presented with a tick box here that says add capture folders if you wish. If you don't want to add those capture folders, you can just disable that. So let's see how this part works. So let's just call this demo 1 for an example, and add capture folders method manual. So if I wanted to add a few capture subfolders, I could do like day 1, day 2, and day 3, like so. Pay attention to what it says here. It says new line delimiter, which means that every time I step down to a new line, it's going to create a new folder. So we're going to end up with 3 folders, day 1, day 2, day 3, and say okay, like so. Look at the session that we have. If we look at the session here in our Finder, we can see those 3 folders. And now we have a new section over here called Session Folders, which shows you all the various different folders in your session. So I don't have to go to that step and drag them over to favorites. So now I can happily browse between those 2 folders, right click, set whatever I want as the capture folder, and so forth. So very basically, that's how the session builder works. Now, if we go in and do another demo, what we can also do if you want to, of course, if you know what folders you want to have, you can copy, paste them from a simple list like so. So if I say okay, that's going to make my capture folder with my folders like so once more. Let's do another one, call this demo 3. Now, notice there's a little tip here, use / to create subfolders, e.g. parent and child. So if I just drag or copy paste this larger example here into the wrong window, in one here, what are we up to? Demo 3, I think. What this will do is create a folder called lighting test, and then a day 1 folder and a subfolder inside called look 1, and then look 2, look 3, and then day 2 and day 3, and so forth. So if we say okay to this one, very quickly we end up with a session structure that looks like that. Now, to create those manually in Finder or Windows Explorer would, not be especially convenient. The other benefit to this, of course, if we go back in here, a new session, demo 5, if that's what we're up to. Let's throw these back in again. Of course, we can save this as a preset. So over here on the right hand side, if I say save custom preset, this is a 3-day shoot. Save that, and then now I can always access this preset. So under here, we could have a whole various different list of presets which have our various different folder structures that we want to have. Pretty nice, huh? Now the good thing is, let's wipe all that out for a second. So if I go and choose that preset, then it just loads everything in like so. Easy. So that's what we can do from a manual perspective. So you see method here says manual. We've got different options of delimiter here, comma, semicolon, and space. So if you're not telling Capture One that a new folder starts on a new line, it could be after a comma. Now that's particularly handy. A lot of our clients are using folder structures or product names from an Excel sheet, so they, or a Google sheet or something like that. So if that's exported as a CSV file, comma separated values, then you can drop that, copy paste that straight into there as well. So lots of different ways that you can use this engine to build folders. Now there's another method, automated. Now this method, automated, is only available in Capture One Studio. So everything you've seen so far is available in Capture One Pro. This option of automated is available in Capture One Studio. And I will just take a quick pause for answering questions. I think we're all good so far. Let's have a look. There was one from Jero. How can you quickly switch the capture folder? A couple of different ways. Good question, actually. So one, you can just, let's come out of that, sorry, right click and say set as capture folder, but you could also set that as a shortcut key. So in edit keyboard shortcuts, so up here, keyboard shortcuts, you can also set a shortcut key for that. So up to you, right click and change it, or use your shortcut key, nice and quick. Nice one. Okay, moving on to the automated method. So I'm going to say new session once more. Let's call this, what are we up to? Can't remember. Automated. This allows you to use tokens in Capture One. Tokens pop up in various parts of the application, and that grabs some kind of metadata or something else to create a structure. And in this case, it would be our folder structure. So here in this example, we've got general text. So this is just typing in. So you can type or use tokens. And then what we've got here is day and a 2-digit counter. If we click on this box down here, this opens up various different other tokens which you can drag into the structure as well. So we've got a digit counter, we've got some date ones, and the session name as well. So I'm going to go for a 2-digit counter. We're going to have 5 of those folders, and the folder starts at 1. And then there's an option here that says add subfolders, and I'm going to have subfolders called look. We're going to have 8 of those, and also a 2-digit counter. So that will quickly construct this session in a second. So if we do that, we see capture day 1 with 8 look folders, day 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Now, once we are in a folder, or sorry, in a session and we've created our folders, this might be Jan's question. If we go up here, you can see add folder and add multiple folders. So if you add folder, you can go ahead and just add any folder into your session. You can say add multiple folders, which will take you back into the session builder. You can right click anywhere and say add folder inside, and so forth. So there's lots of different ways that you can build on your session without having to go into that dialogue as well. Don't forget, just to wrap this part up, you can also save this as a custom preset as well. So you can save manual or custom presets. Once you're in the automated section here, another little tip. So if we've set it up like this, if I switch back to manual, it will actually show me what it's going to create. And then if you wanted to add like a further folder, like lighting test, I could do so now. And then that will create that structure and also add that manual folder here as well. So lots of different ways you can do it. Jan, hope that answers your question as well. Cool. Nice one. All right, let's close these millions of sessions down, and then we're going to talk about this tool, Retouch Faces. Let me just check on the questions for a second. If you click on the capture folder, what is shown? Basically, whatever is the nominated capture folder. Sorry, let me just open up my last. Shouldn't have shut those down so quick. So if you click on this, notice it says shortcuts, important clue here. So that will show you whatever is nominated as the capture folder. So if we're down here in look 2 and I set that as capture folder and I click here, it shows me whatever is set to my current capture folder. Same goes for select, same goes for output, and same goes for trash. So you can have multiple different select folders if you wish, different output folders and so forth, but whatever has the little icon next to it, output, selects, capture, whatever you click on here will then reflect what is set there. So this is a shortcut, but that's a good question, Barry, actually. Nice, cool, fantastic. All right, let's move on, close this one down again, and we talk about Retouch Faces here. So we've added a new tool tab called Retouch. By default, it only has this tool in it called Retouch Faces. So you might be asking, what's the point of making a tool tab if it's just going to have one tool? Well, of course, it gives the ability to add your own tools inside it. So I've added a layers tool and a color editor tool for reasons which will become clear later on. But it also means it gives the scope to add other retouching tools in the future as well. So right now it's Retouch Faces. We've got a number of sliders here, which then allow you to do some pretty nice natural looking retouching onto your portrait subjects. So we go through each of the sliders, and then later on we talk about how you can incorporate other tools in Capture One, like people masking, color editor, auto crop, to give you a really nice editing workflow as well. So let's zoom in a little bit so you can see what's happening, and we go through the sliders kind of individually. First one we're going to look at is blemishes. We'll come back to impact kind of once we've gone through all of them. So dragging the blemish slider, you can probably guess what's going to happen. It starts to remove blemishes. Now if I just long press on blemish, you can see before and after. First important thing to think about is that this slider is not linear. So what's happening when you're first dragging it is that it's trying to get rid of the bigger, more noticeable blemishes. And then as you get to the end of the slider, this is when we're kind of really ramping it up, making it much stronger, getting rid of the smaller stuff. So the idea being is that, you're not getting rid of everything off the bat straight away, only till you push it all the way to the right, then you get the full removal. So if we look at, say, the forehead for a second, if I just put it around sort of 30, you can still see some small ones and so forth, or natural skin texture, which you may well want to leave. Now, depending on your personal taste, culture, intended output, and so forth, it's entirely up to you how far you want to push it, of course. As I go further to the right, that's going to do a stronger job of removing those smaller blemishes. It also is respecting or attempting to respect natural features of the face. And there's a good example here, like this beauty mark. So for example, as I drag that to the right, it doesn't remove it. To give you another example, if I go to this image and do the same thing, similar thing happens, like so. The two beauty marks there are respected. But like all these kind of tools, there is a possibility that it might get rid of something that you don't want. Now, before and to prevent those questions, there is in the works, and I've already seen prototypes and so forth, a way to target certain features on the face that you want to keep. So if, for example, the blemish slider is taking away a beauty mark that you definitely want to keep, then of course, we give you the option to say, actually protect that. So that is coming, can't tell you exactly when, but it's already in development. To combat some of the other questions that are probably going to come up, is this working on a layer? Part of the reason for me putting the layers tool here is you can see that no, it's not creating a layer or anything like that. It is essentially working on a selective part of the image, but it's not creating a layer in Capture One in the traditional sense. The reason for that is, of course, we want to make this tool super simple and easy and fast to use without having to create that layer. And it also makes shooting tethered a possibility, copy pasting much more straightforward, and so forth. So the goal is to make these tools as easy and seamless as possible. So there was a question earlier which I wanted to tackle, if it's still here. I think it was earlier on. Cloud Strife. I think what you're interested in is, how is this working? So first of all, I mean, I'm going to go up against you on this and say, don't worry how it's working. Judge for you, or judge it on the results. So if you like what it's doing, great. What I can tell you though, of course, is that yes, there is some AI here, and it's all very easy to get excited about AI. And just by putting AI on something doesn't mean that it's good. It might mean that it's using AI or machine learning, or the company is completely lying to you. Either way, of course, we use AI in this. we need to use AI to determine the features on someone's face. So we need to know where certain landmarks are, like eyes, nose, mouth, and so on and so forth. We also need to try and find actual features that we want to leave alone, like beauty marks and other features of the face. So we've got a mixture of AI, which is detecting those kind of features, and also traditional image editing techniques, frequency separation, brightening, darkening things, and so forth, to get you to the final result. So it's a mix of those two different things. I'm not going to sit here and just say it's AI, because that's not true. There's some elements of that, and there's some elements of normal photo editing techniques. Whilst we're on the subject of AI, a completely important thing to point out is that you do not need to be connected to the internet for this to work. We're not sharing any image information to an evil Capture One server somewhere or something like that. This does not require an internet connection. I'm obviously connected to the internet because I'm talking to you guys, but it is not required for this feature to work. And secondly, in terms of training the AI features, we do not use your images to train the AI models. Fortunately, Capture One is full of a variety of various different photographers, and we have a lot of our own images that we can use to train AI models. We only use images that we have explicit permission to train AI models on. So no internet connection required. We're not using your images, because that question seems to come up quite frequently, but it does not. Okay, so that's blemish removal. Now that is 2 images I've shown. Does it need to be in a studio? No, it does not. So let me just very quickly whiz through a couple of other examples. So we've got a gent here in natural light on the racetrack. If I pull up the blemishes, you can see it does a pretty nice job, like so. We've got this gent here, which is again not in the best light whatsoever, but we can bring up the blemish slider and do quite a nice job there, but keep all the natural texture and so on and so forth. We've got a black and white. No, that's not a black and white. So we've got another studio image here. This one's slightly higher resolution. So let's come down to 50% so you can see what's happening. Drag the slider, job done, and so forth. Does it work on black and white? Yes, it does. Here's our very own Alex, who you've seen live streaming as well. Pull up the blemish slider and away we go. Now this is a case where you might say, actually, I'd like to keep a couple of those marks because they belong on Alex's face. So that's where something like blemish protection might be of a benefit. But yes, it's working fine on black and white images as well. Here we've got an example like so, and then if I drag, let's go in a bit closer so you can see what's going on. If we drag the slider just a little bit and then more, then we get that pronounced or deeper removal of blemishes like so. So very versatile in the kind of images that you can use with it. Let's pick on me. We're going to use me a couple of times as well. So I wouldn't go that far for myself on blemish removal. I would keep it relatively authentic, which would be somewhere around there. But that's the whole point of having that non-linear sliders, so that the first part is getting rid of the big stuff, and then the more you push it, you know, the more aggressive it is as well. Nice. Okay, so that's the blemish slider. Pretty easy to figure out how that works, I would say. So let's move on to making sure I haven't forgotten anything. Let's have a look at the dark circles side of things, which I'm sure you can figure out what that is doing. So I'm going to switch to a different collection of pictures. We're going to use me again. Let's reset this guy. We'll just make him a little bit brighter. So if we go into 100%, dark circles, what this does is brighten up the area under the eye, reduce the contrast a little bit to reduce that effect of dark circles. Just a simple drag like so, and you can see the change. If I long press on dark circles, you can see the before and after, or we can bring up the before and after option like so. Again, selective adjustment to where it needs, and on this chap we could probably bring up the blemishes a bit more, and we've done a quick simple retouch. Same for me, morning of Las Vegas, hence the red bags under the eyes. So let's do that. Bring up the dark circles and the hey presto before and after. With some other edits, of course, like so, does a pretty good job. Dark circles, pretty easy to understand. Good question from Axel. We're going to look at that. Can you apply this as a preset or a style? Yes, you can. No problem at all. And we'll look at that, don't worry. Whilst we've answered that question, let me just take a quick pause. Let's have a look. Darren says, thanks for commenting on the features upcoming. I found it aggressive against moles. Yeah, it's really subject dependent. So in, what I showed you, it worked fine. Like that example on Alex, you could see it was removing a couple of their spots, which actually you might want to keep. So yeah, having the blemish protection is going to be super handy. Okay, let's have a look in here. Do these tools impact overall resolution? Not that I've seen. Now, caveat, obviously, if you max everything out, you might argue that you're reducing resolution, but it's very different to applying something like a blur or a negative clarity. That's a completely different thing. So I wouldn't get too worried about reducing resolution. You'd have to be pretty aggressive, and even then I don't think really you're reducing resolution because you're not softening the overall image. It is of course very selective. Sue was asking, could you use the eraser tool to bring back blemishes until the update? No, you couldn't. It wouldn't be possible, because if it was on a layer that you could see, yes, you could do, but this is not on a layer that you can interact with for reasons that we spoke about earlier. Nice. All right. I think that's good for questions now. Helen and Victor are beavering away in the background as well. Someone asked about multiple people. Yes, it does work with that. So let's go on to that shortly. Even skin. This one's going to be a little bit harder to see on screen depending on what kind of resolution or what your connection is like. But what even skin hopes to do is to even out the contrast differences on larger surfaces of the skin. So if we take this example here, we're going to kind of be looking up here over at the forehead. So first of all, I'm going to do a little bit of blemish removal, but not much. And then we're going to go full noise here and drag the amount of the even skin slider all the way to the right. So what I do is, if I do before and after, and if you kind of look around here in the middle, so that's before and after, it's just evened out the differences in the contrast so the skin looks more even. Now it's not going to completely flatten it off so it looks like an over-exaggerated Snapchat / TikTok filter or something like that. There's still going to be an element of realism about it as well. But again, you can see before and after. Now underneath that is a texture slider. So going back to the resolution question, we can think about that. So at 0, this is what we feel is a good compromise between tweaking the texture of the skin a little bit, but not making it look fake. Now, if you want to be more aggressive, you can push it to the left and have less texture. Let's go to 200% because then we can really see, okay, that's 0 and that's minus 100. So it has reduced the texture, but I wouldn't say the resolution per se. If we go in the other direction, helps if you pick it up, then you see we've got more skin texture, or we're not really changing it a great deal. Whereas 0 we feel is a good compromise between the two. So for this image, I would go, so we've done blemishes, we've done some even skin, and then lift up the dark circles like so. And if we look at before and after, that's what we've done with our Retouch Faces tool, very briefly. Someone, I saw a question, but I didn't answer it. Does this work with crow's feet? Does it reduce crow's feet? It's not removing wrinkles, if that's what you're thinking, but the effect of even skin and dark circles, if you see on this, does also, because we're reducing the contrast here, does kind of give an impression that you're reducing a wrinkle, but it's not doing anything which you might be assuming in terms of completely removing them, but it still looks nice and natural. Fabulous. Last but not least, contouring. Actually, we'll look at contouring in a second after we've looked at a group. So if we think about what happens with a group of people, so this image has got 2 people in it, and straight away you can see we've got 2 indicated faces up the top. So we've got an all selection and a 1 and a 2. So what we can do with this setup is apply the adjustments to the same amount to everybody, or we can do them individually, or it's a combination of the two. And when I say combination, you'll see what I mean in a second. So if we were to do this for a reel, I would say, okay, on all of the subjects, I'm going to go roughly like that for blemishes. On the first face, so if I tap on number 1, this is face number 1, I'm going to add lots of even skin. On my second face, I'm going to bump up the blemishes more because it already had the value that we applied to everything. And then finally for everything else, contouring, this is like a dodge and burn, so it will naturally darken and brighten areas of the image. So almost like if you were doing a manual dodge and burn with a brush. So we can now handle those faces separately or as a group. How many faces can you handle? I think the max limit is 32. To be honest, unless you're shooting with like 150 megapixel cameras, once you get to about 10 people in a shot, the face is obviously relatively small that you don't really see or get much benefit from playing around with retouch faces. But 32 faces is the limit. If we turn this button on here, show detected faces, number 1, number 2, or all of them like so. And Capture One is looking at them in a left to right position. So if I were to copy what I've done here with the copy button up in the top right, select these other pictures. Let's just turn this off for a second and say apply. Then it's going to apply those adjustments to those other images. Doesn't matter if they're moving around, but position is important in this case because Capture One will always treat the face positions in a left to right basis. So it's delivering whatever we added for face number 1 in that position. But it does mean that now we've got our retouching is done and all good. Little note on the contouring again. So if we add some contouring here, note there is a highlight on the right hand side of the face. So Capture One will respect any purposely placed highlights and not mess with those. So if I add in contouring, so you can see if I go too much, it looks silly, obviously. But if we put in a little bit of contouring, it doesn't change the highlight there. That natural highlight is respected. Question from Matt, is it possible to add names to the Faces tab? I think that's what you're asking, Matt. No, it's not possible at this current time. So they're just numbered 1 to 2 on a left to right basis. Fantastic. The final one, slider, which was right at the start, is this one called Impact. And what Impact does is vary the impact, as you can probably guess. So if you think, oh, you know what, I've overcooked it a little bit, perhaps I can dial this down, then what it will do is just reduce the effect of all the sliders in one. So it means you don't have to go back through and tweak the various different sliders. You can simply go ahead and play with your impact as you want, like so. And notice you can have different impacts for all of the faces as well. So you can really fine tune it to your heart's content. Fabulous. Question from Alex said it'd be nice if it extended to the neck. That's something we're also thinking about as well. Should we extend past the face? Can we include the body or whatever? This is of course iteration 1 and it's only going to get better in the future as well. David was asking, is texture dependent on the amount? If the amount is 0, then texture has no effect. You know what? That is an excellent question, David. I've got the feeling it is dependent on the amount. So if amount is at 0, let's just go to 200%. And we do texture minus, oh no, it does have an effect. So texture is still having a change like so. So texture minus 100 softening, texture plus 100, like so. Something in the middle for a natural look. So it is separate to that, okay? Good to know. Good question, David. William says, so is the individual retouch additive to the global group retouch? Yes, exactly. So if we go back to the group, if we look at this one here, so everything, let's reset it and do it from scratch. So right now we're everything at 0. So if I do like blemishes at 28, now we go to phase 2, it's already at 28, but if I want to add a bit more, I can bump this slider up. So now number 1 is at 28, number 2 is at 73. So yes, it is added. And also, let's just put a change here. Notice now, as I've made adjustments to the different faces, they have a little reset button at the top. So if you want to reset an individual face, you can simply tap on that and that will reset only one. If you want to reset the entire tool, you can press the reset button up the top here, like so. Sorry, I just accidentally moved my tool. Andrea says, is there any advantages if I create a new layer after the corrections? No, not related to this tool whatsoever. But we'll look at a workflow where we do use layers. Check in here. Questions are good in that front. As I said, Vanessa, this is iteration 1. So yeah, we're always going to add more stuff. So don't worry about that too much. And don't forget, if you're asking a question, put it in the Q&A tab. Otherwise it gets mixed up in the chat. All right, let's move on. And then I want to show you, first of all, styles. So let's go ahead and check here. So we've got some retouching done here. We've also obviously got some black and white stuff going on. There's a couple of layers here and so on and so forth. So 2 things, you can save a custom preset. So like any other Capture One tool, you can save a custom preset and then that will only affect this tool. Or in the styles and presets tool, you can save a custom style, which would do everything. So if I save this custom style, it's got these layers on there, it's got the retouch faces going on and so forth. So if I save this and just call this black and white portrait retouch, like so, I can go to any other image. Let's go to this one, apply this, and hey presto. So now that's applied everything that was in those adjustments on the previous image, including the retouch and everything as well. So yes, you can save a style. Yes, you can save a preset. Now, the reason why earlier I alluded to it's quite handy having, let's go back to, what should we grab? I alluded why it's quite useful to have, you know, like your layers and mask here as well. Let's retouch this image. So first of all, let's do a quick retouch here. So we're going to do some blemish removal. Let's do a little bit of even skin, maybe not that much, like so. So now we've done a very speedy retouch like so. Before and after, that's what it looked before. There's a little bit of difference in the skin tone color, but that's an easy fix. We can grab our people mask and we want to have face skin. So I can create that mask. That gives me this. I can then go ahead into my skin tone tab of my color editor, grab my color picker, pick on my desirable skin tone. So let's go around here and then simply use the uniformity sliders to even up the hue on the skin, either to the max amount or just have it somewhere in between, like so. So now we've done a pretty nice face edit without having to do any manual mask drawing or anything like that, just doing everything automated. And this is an important point of Capture One, in that the AI tools that we've added, and there's been a lot now, subject background masking, people masking, grouping of images, automatic rotation, all of that has some kind of AI or image detection going on in it. None of that is to take away creativity. It's to give you more time to do the fun stuff. Of course, if we remove photographers from the world, we don't have a business. So it's definitely not our intention to take away creative tasks, but to ease up your workflow in situations like this and try to do more in Capture One. Capture One is not a Photoshop replacement. I don't think anyone would ever say that, certainly within the walls of Capture One. But over the years, if we think 10, 15 years ago, the amount that you can do in Capture One gradually creeps into an image editor like Photoshop, Affinity Photo, or whatever. Nice. Let's see, what's next? Okay, let's look at kind of another edit, but copy pasting more stuff, just to give you an idea of how you could incorporate this into your workflow. So we've got a picture of Nathan here. We've got 7 Nathans actually. Nathan is one of our developers. And the first thing that we're going to do is use one of our existing styles. So if we go into styles, I'm going to use one of our film styles. Let's go for F402, like so. That's a little bit on the warm side for me. So I'm going to pull the white balance back a tiny bit. Next, we're going to do what we've been doing for the past half an hour, which is chuck in a little bit of retouch things, like so, keeping it nice and subtle. And then we are going to use our, might as well use it here. We're going to use our people masking. So we're going to have a face skin, we're going to have the hair, we're going to have the pupil, and we're going to have the sclera, and we're going to have those as separate masks. So I'm going to ask Capture One to build me all of those. So first of all, for our hair mask, we're going to bump up the clarity to get a nice bit of extra contrast. To make sure we don't block up the shadows, we're going to open that a little bit. On our pupil and iris mask, we're going to do a bit of brightening. Same for the sclera, we're going to brighten that as well. And on the face skin mask, we're going to do what we just did on the other image. Nathan's pretty even, to be fair, so I'm not sure if there's much to do, but let's pick that and give him a little dose of uniformity. Whoops, not there. Go there, that's better. And then what I didn't do earlier was pull out the background. So we're going to do a background mask, which gives us this, marked in red. And I'm going to brighten that a little bit as well, something like that. So we started with that, and now we've gone to this. None of those masks I had to create by hand. If you imagine only 2 years ago, all of those masks would have had to be created by hand. So I'd still be doing them, and I certainly wouldn't be able to do the next step, which is a copy paste. So what I can do now is grab all the other Nathans. Oh no, first of all, I need to say copy up here. Copy everything, grab all the other Nathans, and then apply that across. Like so. So now this is going to build all those layers on each of those images. Doesn't matter that Nathan's moving around, doesn't matter if he's a bit bigger or smaller in the frame, no problem whatsoever. And now if we just go to a different Nathan, like so, let's grab this one. So we've got all those various different layers, all our retouching things that's gone on, and that was all copied across nicely. So if we look at the different layers, so you can see those layers that were created like so. Now, as I said, if we'd done everything manually, we wouldn't be able to copy paste that stuff across. Now to finish, we're going to use a really handy feature which a lot of you probably don't know you have. So I'm using Capture One Studio for clarity, but what I'm going to do now is also available in Capture One Pro. So what you're looking for if you're running Capture One Pro is at the bottom of the crop tool, you'll see 2 similar buttons, set as reference and apply reference. So I'm going to do, let's say, a 2:3 aspect ratio. Let's bring up all the Nathans actually. I'm going to do a 2:3 aspect ratio, which is something like this. And I'm going to say set reference and apply. And straight away we get all our Nathans cropped. And what auto crop is doing is keeping his head at the same size and relative position in the frame. Now, if you look at the actual crop marks, you see, for example, this crop is bigger. Whoops, can't turn off my mouse locator for a second. You see this crop is bigger because Nathan is bigger in the frame. This crop is tighter because Nathan is smaller in the frame, but the whole idea is that it gives us a nice consistent crop. So yes, in Capture One Studio, there's kind of more fancy AI cropping stuff, but all of you have access to AI crop in Capture One Pro, and you can do exactly the same here as well. So yes, retouching tools are new, but don't forget all the stuff you've already got as well. And using this in a combination gives us a really nice workflow. And also everything that I've got set here, if you're shooting tethered in the studio, then this can apply as you shoot as well. So the benefit here, of course, is that, you know, no one likes having their picture taken. I don't like having my picture taken. But as a headshot or portrait photographer, if you're taking pictures and you with your client are viewing them up on screen, you're actually getting much closer to a final result. Nice little confidence boost. Don't you look fantastic? Don't have to tell them there's been a little retouch tweak or whatever. But of course, your skill is in lighting, in posing, and also editing as well. So by getting closer to that final image, your sitter is going to be much more confident, much happier that they're having their picture taken than if we're just looking on the back of an LCD trying to say, oh, it's not going to quite look like that. I'll clean you up, don't worry. Nice one. Okay, how are we doing for time? Nearly done. So I've got just a couple of nice things to talk about. Let's just stick with Nathan. So those of you who've been using larger monitors, retina displays, 5K displays, and so forth, and this applies to also those of you not using those, is that the viewer performance is now much improved. So it means if I'm dragging a slider, so if I'm dragging this contrast slider, now the frame rate of the live stream might not be as nippy as the frame rate on Capture One, but try it yourself. You can download a trial, remember. You'll find the viewer performance is much, much nicer. So much smoother experience. Is just way nicer to edit. So it's been a long time coming, but it's definitely there. In terms of our collaboration tools, so Capture One Live and Live for Studio, let's open up another session for a second. Let's grab this one as it's not too enormous. So what we spoke about right at the start, the new session folders, these are also reflected in Capture One Live. So if I share this online, what you'll see here under collection is that I can share all session folders. And if you haven't tried Capture One Live, I would urge you to do so. You've all got access to it in some form or another, but I'm going to share all my session folders. So share and manage access. Let's open up Safari first of all, paste that link in. Capture One is starting to upload those. Now we're live streaming, so it's going to slow it down a little bit. But straight away, you can see over here, you get access to the full session folder structure. If I go into light tests like so, we can see our images, browse through them, add star ratings and color tags, which are synced directly back to Capture One. So that structure is all emulated there quite nicely. Question from Dick, can you use match look with the retouch tool? In terms of, I'm not quite sure your question, Dick, that if you wanted to match look certain elements, no. I mean, try not to think about the retouch tool as a layer that you can edit. So just think about, if I go back to Capture One for a second, under retouch, we've got these sliders, of course. It helps if we've got a image up, of course. You've got these sliders, of course, you adjust them, they react to where it makes sense on the image itself. So yes, there's a layer kind of there in the background, but it's not something you can interact with. So don't mix up the two, I think, is the best way to answer that. Okay, back on subject here for a second. So this is happily uploading. It's probably uploaded the whole lot by now. So what it does mean is that this structure, as I said, is fully represented. Now, something which you might not be aware of, and something which I wasn't super aware of, if we go ahead and right click here and say add a folder inside, let's say look 6 like that. So we're in our shoot and we want to add an additional folder like so, then we can do so. Notice it doesn't have the little sharing icon next to it. So currently in Capture One, we can't see look number 6. But if I right click on it and say share online, start sharing, it says, hey, it's going to add it to those users who can view session folders. So if I just refresh this page, go over here, now I've got my look 6 folder as well. Oh, there was a question right at the start from Fleo or something like that. You've got last to first and first to last. So if you've missed that option, it's in the top right hand corner. Yeah, in terms of saving a match look preset, just Matthew, the product manager, has popped into my ear. Match look doesn't save any retouching elements. So remember, match look does move a bunch of sliders around, but it does not include retouch faces. So think of that as separate. And finally, if we think about our other collaboration tools, so Capture One Live, as you've seen here, this is great if you have someone in a different building, in a different country, in a different city, where you want to be able to interact on a shoot like this and give them the ability for star rating, color tagging, writing comments. That works great. If you happen to be in the same studio or location, then you can use our application which runs on an iPad, which is called Live for Studio. So in the Tether tool tab over here, you'll see a small tool called Live for Studio. This is a studio feature only. And once again here, we can share all our session folders. So if I start sharing and if I bring up my iPad on screen, you can see the name at the top is sharing Ecom Shoot, which is the name of my session. So if I tap on that and go over here into my projects and grab one of these, then you can see I can share and see that complete session folder structure as well. So important update, but worth mentioning. In terms of performance, Capture One Live performance is increased as well. So it means uploading and working with larger collections is much more efficient as well. Final thing to talk about, we can keep this image up here. This is shot with, I believe, a Canon EOS R5 Mark II. So if we look into our lens corrections tool, you'll see here that the lens itself is listed. So this is, whoops, helps if I share the right screen. So in our lens correction tool, you'll see here we've got the lens in use that has been listed. This is a profile that we've built in the Capture One factory. Now, you might have noticed with other manufacturers like Nikon, Fujifilm, Leica, I believe, as well, have an option called manufacturer profile. And that means there's enough raw data in the raw file that we can then use to perform lens corrections. So up until recently, we haven't been able to do that with Canon RF lenses. But due to Canon being a swell bunch of people and us having a really nice working relationship with them now, we can now do that. It is camera dependent, which I'll mention in a second, but first of all, just to show you the difference, I'm going to create a new variant, which is basically just giving me a virtual copy. But I need to do that to show you the new method because we won't go in and change all your existing Canon R5 Mark II images to the new system in case you've made your own tweaks. So this would only happen on new imports or if you make a new variant. Now you can see we've got the manufacturer profile. You can pick the Capture One profile if you wish, but we believe the manufacturer profile gives you as good, if not better result, like so. So currently it's only available for Canon R5 Mark II, the R1 and the R50V at this stage in time. So if you're using those cameras, you will see the manufacturer profile pop up. The benefit, of course, is that if Canon launch a brand new lens tomorrow, it's instantly supported in Capture One. We don't need to have the lens. We don't need to profile it, which is a very, at times, time-consuming process. Instant support, like you've seen with Nikon, Fujifilm, Panasonic, Leica, and so forth. Another little change to Capture One Live: if you are using the studio version, your session, Capture One Live session, will last for 60 days. If you're on Capture One Pro with the all-in-one plan, that will give you 30 days. Same if you're on Capture One Pro and you've bought the Capture One Live add-on. If you're on Capture One Pro without the Capture One Live add-on, then it lasts 24 hours, but you can test it out and see how the feature works and so forth. Fabulous. Right. That pretty much takes us up to the end of today's demo. I'm just going to have a little look at the questions. On YouTube, I see Mathieu, who's our product manager, our most senior product manager, has been answering your questions on YouTube as well. So you've had 4 people from Capture One assisting you at the moment as well. So Matthew has pretty much answered everything on YouTube, so that's great. Good to see. Looking over here for other questions. Helen and Victor pretty much answered everything, so that's great as well. Fantastic. Nothing else for us to do. I like Darren's comment, but if I use iPads, what will I do with all the ISO BenQ monitors? Well, you can still use those. We also have client viewers, which allow you to put different displays or different views on different monitors if you're using Capture One Studio. But yes, an iPad is actually a really nice, economical way to give extra viewers to people in the studio or on location who you want to get away from the computer. Let's be honest, that's what it's all about. If you don't want them to be crowding over your machine, poking at your screen, you can give them their very nice, high quality, retina displayed iPad and send them off somewhere else and they can follow the shoot without interrupting you. So they are a very good, I mean, I say economical, that's maybe not the word, less expensive than an ISO monitor on a stand. But yes, really nice way to give people their own views. Alrighty, I'll be back in June. They're not quite up on the website as yet, but June is kind of partner month because on June the 11th, I'll be working with a company called Simi, based out in France. They have a really nice application called Peak 2. And what Peak 2 does gives you a helicopter view of all your media on your system, which could be videos, photos, so on and so forth. The nice thing is it interacts with Capture One catalogs and Capture One sessions very nicely. So another Mathieu from Peak 2, or Simi rather, is going to give us a demo of Peak 2 and how that works. And at the end of the month, we'll have Gary from Headshot Tools showing us how Headshot Tools interacts with Capture One. Headshot Tools, if you haven't heard of it, allows you to kind of have a queuing system if you're doing like a bunch of headshots at a conference at a company or something like that. So aids at the capture part of it, allows you to deliver files to your clients as well, and just streamlines that whole process. So we'll have a look at Headshot Tools at the end of the month, Peak 2 around June the 11th, but they'll be up on the support page towards the end of May, if not earlier. So I hope you found that useful. Of course, new features are only going to get better and better. We'll probably have a service release in a couple of weeks' time, which might add a couple of things, but also fix a couple of bits and pieces as well. If you want to grab a trial, you can do so now. If you're on a subscription, of course, you've got access to 16.6 immediately. Great. Enjoy your weekend when it comes, everybody. Thanks for joining and see you all soon. Take care.